The wedding contract trembled in her hands as if it knew the truth she didn't. A thin sheet of paper, a forced promise, and a future she never chose. This was how Zareen Qadri's life was being rewritten. Outside the small office window, the daylight looked cruelly bright, almost mocking her helplessness. She wasn't marrying for love. She wasn't even marrying for hope. She was being traded to solve a problem she didn't create. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Wisdom Story House. Stories like this remind us that even broken beginnings can lead to beautiful endings. Zareen had always been the quiet strength of her family. After her father's sudden illness drained every last rupee they had, she became the one who carried the weight. Her elder brother had disappeared years ago, chasing dreams that never returned home. Her mother, worn down by grief and fear, had become dependent on Zareen's sacrifices. So when the wealthy landlord, Hamad Shah, offered a deal, marry his poor, widowed acquaintance, in exchange for clearing their debts, her family didn't hesitate. They saw salvation. Zareen saw a cage. The man she was being forced to marry was introduced to her only once before the ceremony. His name was Rahil Ansari. He arrived in simple clothes, holding the hand of a small boy with curious eyes. There was nothing remarkable about him at first glance. No expensive watch, no flashy car, no commanding presence. Just a tired-looking man with a quiet dignity and a child who clung to him like he was the only safe place in the world. Zareen remembered noticing his eyes the most. They weren't weak, as she had expected from someone described as poor. Instead, they were steady, calm, almost too observant. It made her uncomfortable. It felt like he could see right through the storm she was hiding. The wedding itself was rushed and emotionless. There were no joyful songs, no laughter, no warmth. Just a few witnesses, signatures, and a heavy silence that followed her into her new life. As the daylight poured into the small rented house Rahil lived in, Zareen felt like she had stepped into a completely different world. It wasn't miserable, but it was modest, too modest for someone who had just sacrificed everything. The house had only 2 rooms. One for Rahil and his son, and one that would now belong to her. The furniture was simple but clean. The kitchen had only the essentials. There was no sign of luxury, no hint that anything extraordinary existed behind this ordinary life. The boy, whose name was Ayan, watched her with a mix of curiosity and hesitation. He wasn't used to having someone new around, especially someone who now held the title of a mother, even if it felt forced and unnatural. The first few days were painfully quiet. Zareen kept her distance, speaking only when necessary. Rahil didn't push her. He respected her silence, giving her space without questioning her coldness. It was strange, almost unsettling. She had expected control, perhaps even cruelty. But instead, she found patience. Every morning, Rahil would wake up early, prepare breakfast, and get Ayan ready for school. Zareen noticed how gently he treated his son, how carefully he tied his shoelaces, how he always made sure Ayan smiled before leaving the house. It wasn't the behavior of a man broken by poverty. It was the behavior of someone deeply grounded, someone who understood responsibility in a way she had only recently begun to. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Zareen began to see cracks in the image she had created of him. Rahil wasn't just a poor man. There was something unusual about him. He worked from home most of the time, spending hours on his laptop, making calls in a calm, controlled tone. Sometimes, expensive-looking cars would stop outside their house, but Rahil would meet the drivers outside and never invite them in. It didn't make sense. One afternoon, while cleaning, Zareen accidentally opened a drawer in Rahil's room. Inside were neatly arranged documents, files, contracts, and papers that didn't belong in a house like this. Her hands shook as she picked one up. The numbers on the page were overwhelming. Investments, properties, company shares. It was impossible. Her heart raced as realization began to form. This wasn't just unusual, it was a lie. Or perhaps, a hidden truth. When Rahil returned that evening, she confronted him, her voice trembling between anger and confusion. She demanded answers, demanded to know why she had been made to believe he was someone he clearly wasn't. Rahil didn't deny it. Instead, he sat down, his expression calm but heavy, and explained everything. He wasn't just a businessman. He was the owner of one of the largest private conglomerates in the country. His wealth was beyond imagination. But after his wife passed away, everything had changed. The fame, the attention, the greed, it had all become unbearable. People didn't see him anymore. They saw his money. So he disappeared. He chose to live simply, raising his son away from the noise of wealth. He trusted very few people, and even fewer knew his true identity. The marriage proposal had come through Hamad Shah, who was one of the few aware of Rahil's secret. He had insisted that Rahil needed someone in his life, not for wealth, but for companionship. Someone genuine. Zareen felt a wave of emotions crash over her. Anger, betrayal, confusion, and something deeper she couldn't name. She had been forced into this marriage believing she was sacrificing herself for survival. But now, it felt like she had been part of something much bigger, something she didn't fully understand. Days passed, and the truth began to settle. Rahil didn't change after revealing who he was. He remained the same humble, thoughtful man she had slowly started to notice. There was no sudden display of wealth, no arrogance, no shift in behavior. It was as if the money had nothing to do with who he truly was. Zareen, however, began to change. She started helping with Ayan more, assisting with his schoolwork, cooking meals, and slowly becoming part of the life she once resisted. Ayan, in return, began to open up to her, his small smiles becoming more frequent, his trust growing day by day. One afternoon, as sunlight filled the small living room, Ayan fell asleep beside her while reading a story. Zareen looked at him, her heart softening in a way she hadn't expected. This wasn't a burden anymore. It was something else. Something real. Rahil watched from a distance, a quiet smile on his face. He didn't say anything, but in that moment, something shifted between them. Zareen began to see what she had been too hurt to notice before. Rahil hadn't forced her into this marriage. He had simply accepted it, just like she had. But unlike her, he had chosen kindness over resentment. And that changed everything. The turning point came when Zareen visited her old home. The debts were gone, just as promised. Her family was safe. But instead of feeling relieved, she felt distant. The place that once felt like home now felt unfamiliar. On her way back, she realized something unexpected. She wanted to return to Rahil and Ayan. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. The house she once saw as a cage now felt like a place where she could breathe. Where she could heal. And for the first time since the forced marriage, Zareen smiled without sadness. If this story is touching your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Your support helps keep these meaningful stories alive. As weeks turned into months, Zareen and Rahil built something neither of them had expected. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, steady, and real. Love, she realized, wasn't always fireworks and grand gestures. Sometimes, it was found in the simplest moments. In shared meals, in silent understanding, in the way someone chose to stay when leaving would have been easier. Rahil eventually revealed his world to her, not with luxury, but with trust. He showed her the life he had hidden, not to impress her, but to include her. And Zareen, for the first time, didn't feel like an outsider in her own life. She felt seen. Just before we reach the end, I have a special request for you. Comment, kindness wins, if you believe that love built on patience and understanding is stronger than anything money can buy. In the end, Zareen realized that she had not been forced into a life of suffering. She had been unknowingly led to a life of meaning. The man she thought was her burden became her strength. The child she feared would be a responsibility became her joy. And the love she never believed in found her when she least expected it. Because sometimes, the richest man in the world isn't the one with the most money. It's the one who knows how to love without conditions.